This video might get a little bit contentious. A few days ago, someone used ChatGPT, the AI language model, to basically take from George R.R. Martin.
Dracarys.
They used generative AI to write the final 2 books from his Winds of Winter series, creating over 1 million words in the process. But it wasn't just creating words and writing something new, it was literally imitating George R.R. Martin's style from reading his books and following his exact prose, scraping the author's writing without his permission to do so. And this feels like theft. Now you might want to stop me and say, well, wait, hang on a second. How is this different from another author or a fan looking at and reading George R.R. Martin's work and taking a lot of inspiration from it and even writing fan fiction of it? Fan fiction that, funnily enough, George R.R. Martin has been pretty negative about in the past, and I've actually been a huge defender of. And it's not like George R.R. Martin has a bunch of terrible opinions either. In fact, he has some wonderful quotes that a lot of writers could do with listening to, like this one. Writing is a terrible career if you're looking at it as a way to have a career. Ask yourself the question, what if no one ever gives me a penny for my stories? Will I still write them? And if the answer is yes, then you're a writer. Now, this is where I get a little bit confused with George R.R. Martin, because in this second quote, he seems to be talking more about the openness of writing and creativity and the artistry of storytelling, not as necessarily a career or a way to make money, as much as just the ability and the will and desire to write and tell stories. And yet, the way that he talks about fan fiction and the way that I am interpreting it seems to be a bit more possessive over his characters, his story, his settings. But that is ignoring the major reason why I defend fan fiction: the spark of human creativity. No matter what, any fan fiction writer is applying their own perspectives, their own emotions, and their own style to any fan writing. AI at this point is not capable of doing that. There's no creativity here. There's no human input at all, in fact. As the developer laid out in their GitHub, no human writing other than the prompts. The soul of this writing is thus stolen, because it's not created by a human author, or even edited by one. AI itself isn't creating new writing. The only way it is able to create is by following the exact prompts and the exact way that it has been written before. It is essentially putting on a George R.R. Martin skin suit and trying to, as closely as possible, match his writing. It really is just copying. It's copying with new words but in the same style. It's the kind of thing that makes you think, if a human author had done this, would they have been liable for copyright infringement? I can say things like the closest human equivalent would be someone writing these 2 books, copying as much as they can from George R.R. Martin, and then using George R.R. Martin's name to essentially do it, because that's really what we're getting at here. It's not, there is no other style choice here. It is all George R.R. Martin. It's just not actually written by George R.R. Martin. But therein lies part of the issue. There is currently not really any structure for that when it comes to AI. Even trying to clumsily put things together and say, well, if a human author had done this, doesn't really work, because it's not quite the same. And this is probably something more akin to what you see in the art world, where you see people use other artists' style to create new things. And that is not covered by copyright. Style is not covered by copyright. There's just something about this that feels very off. The lack of a human being the one doing the writing, I think, is what's really hitting home here. And while AI has advanced far beyond current laws, leaving this all in gray areas, it could actually be changing. Earlier in July 2023, Sarah Silverman, Mona Awad, and Paul Tremblay filed lawsuits against OpenAI. Additionally, other authors have signed open letters accusing AI developers of exploitative practices by building chatbots to mimic, and regurgitate their writing. George R.R. Martin himself has raised concerns about AI, not so much its ability to make writing that is moving, but still that it could replace jobs. A University of New Mexico professor, Melanie Moses, put it simply: lawmakers should focus on practical safeguards before more existential questions on things like, if AI is actually going to destroy humanity. The only way that AI can create books is by reading, analyzing, and mimicking George R.R. Martin. It is a direct copy of his writing, his style, his voice, and his ideas. The question isn't a matter of it being good or bad writing, it's a matter of it being ethical. And in my opinion, no, it doesn't feel ethical. It's divergent from fan fiction, it's divergent from future authors learning from reading it and being inspired to write more that's like it. It's just base level mimicry. This, to me, devalues the writing. It is a large part of why the actors and writers in Hollywood are on strike, with things like trying to replace writers in the writer rooms with AI, or trying to use a simple scan of a background actor for one day and just own the rights to that person and recreate them using AI. It is taking the human part, which AI doesn't have, and using that part as mimicry. And that's where I'm struggling to this idea of AI, because it's not actually creating anything new itself as much as it is just taking from so many different places. Now, I am not in any way versed in AI. It is something that I have been watching because I'm curious about it. But my general understanding of it is that it's based off of these large language models that are essentially just having to read, copy, and look at everything other people have done. And read isn't exactly the right word for it. There's other terminology, but I think that's what makes the most sense to me. Essentially, it's pulling from everywhere to just reconfigure. When you look at one of the other lawsuits that was going through against AI based off of art, it was basically saying that in the generative art, what it was doing was it was taking all this art from so many different artists and creating a new image that was really a collage. Basically taking all of that artwork, laying it on top of each other, bit by bit, to the point where you even saw watermarks on some of this artwork because it was straight up stolen, and then using it and trying to create something new from that. It's just taking pieces of a puzzle and putting them together in a different place. So at least that's my base understanding of it. It's all the puzzle pieces made by other humans, and generative AI is taking the puzzle pieces and reconfiguring to make a new thing out of the puzzle pieces. And thus, that's what we have with this book. You have all the puzzle pieces that were made by George R.R. Martin that have been reconfigured in a new way to create new stories. And this is just the beginning. It's going to get better and more advanced as we go along. This is the absolute worst that AI is ever going to be. And I'm not saying here that AI on its face is bad. Any new technology is going to come with a lot of fear. I'm old enough to remember panic and fear over digital being an issue with cameras and things like that. I actually learned how to take photos in a dark room, even though it was already passing at that point. But I learned how to do it, and my teacher was really kind of worried about what would happen to the art form of photography with the advent of digital. Same thing with moving from the typewriter to a word processor, moving from journals to things like Campfire that can keep everything in place for you, and adding in stuff like Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid that are in their own way starting to utilize AI to create better ideas of how to help you edit your work. AI in itself, I believe, can still be used as a very helpful tool. It just feels like we have gotten to a point where the technology has advanced beyond the structure within it. So we now have things like this where someone can create an entire series that is basically just stolen from George R.R. Martin. At least in this case, the developer hasn't been trying to sell it, but that hasn't stopped other people from selling AI books on Amazon, or flooding book awards with AI writing, or flooding publishers and other agents with the same thing. We need some kind of legal structure in place at minimum that will at least protect authors in their own work and this ability to mimic and create work that looks and sounds like them. If we don't, we may not have the next J.R.R. Tolkien, the next George R.R. Martin, the next Timothy Zahn, or the next Brandon Sanderson. And there's two main reasons why I think that is. The first obvious question is whether it's going to be viable to write if it can just be copied from other authors who have been proven successful in minutes or hours and recreated and repackaged without consent. Second, though, and perhaps more pertinent to human nature, will the allure of shortcuts in writing stop people from developing their own writing style and voice? Why work on your own craft if you can just type in a prompt to write in the style of your favorite author instead? Are you more likely now to write out long-form division or use the calculator on your phone? It's a clumsy metaphor to be sure, but as we venture into this uncharted territory, I'm kind of grasping at straws here. I don't know where AI is going to take us, and it's certainly not all doom and gloom. There are a lot of ways that AI can be a helpful tool, a co-pilot for you in your writing journey, and trying to prevent it and trying to hide from it is not going to be a viable option. We are not going to be able to stick our heads in the sand and just say, well, I don't like AI, so I don't want it to happen anymore. It's just that the world doesn't care. We're going to need to adapt and utilize it in different ways. And for me, I'm most excited about AI tools that might help me organize because I am unorganized as fuck. And it's not like there's really any other way for me to do that except, getting better at it, I guess. Why am I the problem? I might be part of the problem looking for the shortcuts, but that's something I don't want to go into right now. But I've just felt like I had to say something about this when I saw this story. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think this is fine? Would you utilize AI? What do you think about AI in general? I know it is a very complex subject, and because it is complex, I'm going to implore and ask you all, please be kind to each other in the comments. It is a new technology that is bringing up a lot of different emotions for a lot of people, and a lot of it is fear. Fear of us being replaced is one of the major things. And speaking of, I'm actually going to include a link down to the actors and writers strike. They have a fund that really goes to everyone in entertainment. If you want to help support those strikes, I support them personally. So if you want to, I'll leave that link. No pressure on you if you don't want to. If you don't support it, that's totally fine. I just personally do. After all this talk about AI, I want to leave you with one quote from George R.R. Martin himself. Speaking about AI, will it be good? It might be okay. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think a computer, AI, no matter how it's programmed, can do something truly original, something truly moving. There's a potential here for things to go very, very bad. Bad for us anyway. Not necessarily bad for the big studios. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.